Jesus, whenever like technology works, like literally downloading, I'm like, fucking magic. Anyways, magic. Good morning, I'm Nick Easley, CEO of 3C, also Managing Director of Multiverse Capital. Awesome that you all have the courage to be here today and do what you do in this industry. Be it new, be it 15 years, be it the people that are in frickin' prison for getting medicine to people for literally almost the last 80 years. Thank you for being here and having the courage to stand up for this plant, patients, each other, be it if you're driven by profit, whatever it is. After this last year and a half, holy shit, we're still here and we're only gonna get better. Little disclaimer, I always have to do this. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA. No matter what you do in this industry, you must use these sorts of professionals. Structuring companies, tax, finance, regulation. You do one thing wrong, you lose your license. You do one thing wrong, you go to fucking jail. It's serious. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity when it comes to capital raising, structuring your companies, and creating things that are gonna be legacy entities or generational wealth. That only happens once in a blue moon. Like alcohol happened, tobacco happened, tech happened. What other big pioneer industries do we have? So you're like, I'm gonna do this new thing. There's a time and a place for that, but if there's professionals that have been there and done that, you don't go climb Everest and be like, I think that's a great idea. I'm gonna do that without a guide. Maybe Wim Hof, but I don't even think he wore clothes or anything. Wim Hof, you know him. Anyways, sorry if I offend you, your company, your business, you can't fix stupid. So, not to offend, but like when you fight the truth, you lose. So the truth being, I've done this for 15 years. I'm originally a farm kid from Wisconsin. You know, pretty poor farm kid. Wisconsin's kind of like Germany. Lots of beer, mustard, New Glarus, like cheese, sauerkraut, sour Reuben, like very similar. Lots of German-sounding towns, so very, very familiar with that. But I was in the United States Air Force and was a cryptolinguist. Es por eso hablo español, otros idiomas. But that ability of being in the military, that professionalism and learning, I also got hurt in the service. So it was like, hey, if I hadn't gotten hurt, I would have never found cannabis. So I got out when I was 22 and a half, went to Colorado in 2006, and tried cannabis compared to 14 drugs. I was like, this plant's incredible. It's worth giving a life to, like all of us have pretty much done. And there's so many stories like that. But having been a true pioneer and not having gotten killed yet, I've got some lessons for you from these trenches, and I want to share that based on EU and what's happening in the rest of the world. I'll definitely use that microphone. That microphone. How's that? Oh, double fisting technology. Anyways, global cannabis, some shit's happening. It's 2021. Do you remember when we first started the compassionate use, 1996 in California, and then all these other countries happened, and then things started moving, and then Uruguay legalized, and we thought that the International Narcotics Control Board was just gonna destroy that little country, and nothing happened? And then Canada happened on a medical basis for federal as a country. And then some other countries did that under compassionate use laws because normally a new drug or something has to go through so much clinical trials, API development. You can't just start making medical claims. But remember in the 80s when AIDS got frickin' crazy and people were like dying in the streets? Like we don't have time to go for 11 years. People are dying and the risks of these new drugs and antivirals are worth the cost. And cannabis is literally the same program. That's how we have compassionate use medical programs in the United States and internationally. But it's those sorts of things that you only have a window that happens. And it's this global landscape's developing. I mean, in the United States, we're close to 30 billion probably in revenue of cannabis sales this year, legal for medical and adult use. I mean, the illicit market in the United States, many people think it's like 50, 60 billion. It's like close to 200 billion. Not tracked and logged, not taxed, and that's just transitioning from one thing to another. So this isn't a brand new thing that we're scared people might not use as investors. People already use it, but we're making standardized consumer packaged goods. And as this is happening, you have one shot to secure some of these opportunities. Now, just like Giada said, the most interesting thing that happened this last year was in December. And like I said at the investment forum a few days ago, like when Ukraine leaned forward and he's like, yes. I was like, damn, he put us over the line and we didn't think that was gonna happen. But we rescheduled cannabis internationally, so it's no longer like heroin. which cannabis was the same as heroin until December last year. We were all like watching Netflix in pajamas, and the UN amended the scheduling for cannabis. Still needs more research, but has been shown to have some medicinal benefit. Boom, step one of 3 steps that's going to change the global landscape. So it's not like, is that gonna happen? It frickin' did. Now, all of the member nations of the United Nations that signed that drug compact, the 1961 Single Convention Treaty on Psychotropic Substances, are in violation of international law that they said that they would agree to. So we're all supposed to amend our own CSAs, Controlled Substances Act, to be in alignment with that drug policy that we ratified again in 1971 and a bunch of times after. So this is huge news for investors, what's gonna happen, clinical trials, standardization of drugs, not just like GW Pharmaceuticals with Epidiolex and some of those kind of crappy products that are really expensive, not super efficacious, and have a few milligrams of something from a fucking plant. It's gonna allow other people to do that, but that company's what? Market cap, $8 billion for a little pill that's got 2.5 milligrams of THC and 2.5 milligrams of CBD in it? Huh. Interesting. Yeah, the United Nations, kind of a big deal. So raising capital in this industry is very hard because it has been federally illegal. Like we break every day in the United States, I break federal law with everything I do. Like Pablo Escobar was like very little compared to what I've done. In like racketeering, going state to state, I don't fly with weed from one state to another. But like what we've literally done, big time. And many of you too. Like we're talking about something that's literally illegal. And how to facilitate forming companies. That's why many German lawyers or others in the beginning with the Tinder, they couldn't even work with companies. Even on Guam or many states, the state Supreme Court or Bar Association will say, you can't work with cannabis. And it's like, we're lawyers, we're kind of looking out for our client interests. So it's really hard to raise capital. You can't just go to a bank and be like, I've got a business plan. Family offices, high net worth individuals. You go on public in a country that is legal, Canada, the CSE, TSX. That's why all of those Canadian public companies were able to happen after 2015 because it wasn't federally illegal there. I can't just start an IPO and go to NASDAQ and be like, hey, cannabis company. It's like, this is a federal exchange that's federally illegal. You can't raise money to do something federally illegal on a federal exchange. So it's kind of fucking hard. But if you're not first, you're last. But sometimes when you're first, you actually get frickin' murdered, which if you don't do it right. So there's definitely some navigation that needs to happen. United States is one of these key markets that being there, breaking federal law state by state, the cannabis we grow in one state, we can't bring it to another state to sell it. So it's like I have to grow cannabis in Alaska to sell it in Alaska. I have to manufacture vape cartridges, edibles, chocolates in Massachusetts from cannabis grown in Massachusetts to sell in Massachusetts. But people can come from another state to buy it there. In the United States now, there's 19 states that have legalized adult use cannabis for 21 years or older. There's only about 10 currently doing active sales. DC doesn't really count where our capital is, even though it's legal, but there's this Harris Amendment that doesn't allow the feds are like, we won't give you any taxes, and they won't allow stores, but it's literally legal in Washington, DC for recreational cannabis, where our capital is, where Buffalo Man went and kind of took it over in January, which we don't like to talk about, but kind of happened. But the United States is emerging fast. This is where we make all of our revenue. All possibilities happen based on what's in the United States. And when you see brands and consumer packaged goods and the development of new genetics, next door, like Chaling with Bedrocan in the Netherlands, they have their 6 standardized genetics. In the United States, when you look at Phylos Bioscience and some of these galaxies of genetics, there's over 16,000 individual different cultivar, chemovars, or if you want to say strains, like this type of dog, Hund 1, Hund 2, Hund 3, 16,000 in the United States alone. But from land-race varieties and everything else, this is a dioecious plant, meaning cannabis keeps its sex in 2 houses. There's a male plant and a female plant, but the development and genetics there, you can't protect them like Driscoll in the United States. Biggest berry company in the world, but they make 8% off of every plant that they sell, and they get first right of refusal on the strawberries, the blueberries, the raspberries, but without even having to grow a single plant. Now, you can't protect a genetic. If I get a seed of yours or a cutting of yours, a clone, and I make a copy of that, like I go to your grandma's house and she's got a nice African violet, and I take that little leaf and put in some water, grows little roots, that's a clone, like that Dolly sheep. It's the exact same thing, but you can't sue me for stealing your intellectual property because there's no breeders' rights in the United States. Internationally, once you standardize genetics, you can start to do brand licensing of those. And surprisingly, in the US and internationally, it's not illegal to own the intellectual property to do something illegal. Kind of crazy. So that's an ancillary opportunity, which isn't even high risk, which big banks and others could actually get into. There's more states coming forward. It's only a matter of time. There was a 2-week period this last year where New York governor signed adult use, New Jersey, New Mexico, and Virginia. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? I'd been going slowly, state by state, educate senators. We get this medical law passed. It goes through a bunch of BS. And it was just like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I guess we're gonna need a bigger boat. Like, it was one of those moments that it's like, this is faster than we even thought. And we're not ready for federal legalization in the United States because it's so compartmentalized state by state, doing different pesticide regulations, tracking, taxation, that we're not actually ready to like just do a massive consolidation, because the second that federal legalization does happen, massive roll-ups, institutional capital will gobble up through consolidations and mergers, and none of you, unless you're that, has a shot. And like British American Tobacco, Philip Morris, everybody's on the sidelines. This is too risky for them to play in these little games. They'll let us take all the risk. Oh, you're gonna make a couple $100 million here? Oh, you have $1 billion valuation, that's cute. I'm gonna buy you. And if you don't sell to me, I'll destroy you. Like, these are very powerful entities that have generational wealth behind them, that we have one shot to build this. And as I commonly say, it's not about, I'm gonna be the next Pfizer, or I'm gonna be the next Amazon. There already is a Pfizer, there already is an Amazon. You wanna sell to them. Very seldomly do you actually get to have a disruptive company like Airbnb, but then you'll have challenger companies like VRBO or the 19 other million things. You got Uber, and then you got Didi, and then you got this, and then you got, you know, Here Now or whatever you guys use, Vrooms, I don't know. So the United States, look what's happening there, because it's gonna dictate kind of like what's happening in Europe. 12 minutes in, kicking ass. One of the biggest things is understanding cost of goods sold in Europe. So you're like, I'm gonna be the next world leader in Germany. I'm gonna have this massive greenhouse, see large Denmark or some other places. It's like, what's the cost of production there? What's your VAT taxes? What's your climate? Remember, farm kid. How much does it cost me to grow that echinacea, to make 1 gallon of milk, or 3.78 liters? You know, fucking Americans with our measurement systems, we're so idiots. Sorry about that. Apologize in advance for America. Like little toddlers. But what happened originally is, yeah, we're like new. Like, you guys have been around for like thousands of years. People have been living here. And the same in America, but like with like developed civilizations, we get this first mover opportunity, just like the Canadians. And that's why they built like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hectares of greenhouses, outdoor plantations, massive warehouses like Tilray. Like, I'm gonna take a giant chocolate factory and make it into a giant weed factory. Like, when it costs you $600 or 520 some euros to produce 1 pound or a half a kilo of cannabis, that doesn't make sense from an agricultural standpoint. Temperature, airflow, humidity, daytime highs, nighttime lows, precipitation, frost-free days, all of these things determine where is the best place to grow strawberries or oranges or pineapples or whatever agricultural commodity it is, which this is a fucking plant we're talking about that makes amazing biological compounds. It's also an entheogen, just like lots of other plants and fungi that are illegal, but only do one weird thing at a time. You know, cannabis, we got to get this thing legal in medicine for everybody. But if you understand your cogs, you're raising capital, it's not just about that, if you're not first, you're last thing. Sometimes being first is stupid. But like licenses, hopefully the person's maybe not here, but yesterday there's this person's like, I have this license. I'm like, I would have literally gotten you 10 million euros for that in 2017. I'm like, I don't even really see the value of like 150, 200,000 for that piece of paper anymore. There's pieces of paper that Canopy and Tilray and Aurora went after that they spent 30, 50, 80 million dollars, not on bribes, but like government relations. And then those assets have been sold for like 3 million euros. Like what they did in Spain, what they did in South Africa, they were like, we're gonna take over South America, and spent billions of investors' money from their stock exchanges, and they don't have a single position there anymore. Even though that's where, if you've ever heard of a company like Dole,
if you hold your Colombian positions, your Peruvian positions, and you make it through and you understand your cogs, when this emerges and it's not this compartmentalized patchwork of I can do this here and not here and that, and this is a bona fide commodity, you're gonna be dull. It's not gonna be like, oh, we have a greenhouse in Iceland and like we're gonna take over the world. Yeah, that happened with Canada, it didn't work so much. We buy their greenhouses, we rebuild them in the United States for like 10 cents on the dollar right now. And they just keep growing more and more. So here we are, Europe, navigating this complex framework, which I've been doing since 2015, like having done, Denmark, Germany, Portugal, worked with Slovenia, Romanian kind of hemp side, Poland hemp side, France, like that first kind of R&D market experiment thing is the only market we haven't participated in from a new license application standpoint, which getting that first piece of paper, even though I'm saying sometimes doesn't have value, they do majorly. But when you think about what's happening in the European Union, minus Brexit-ish kind of thing, which is kind of, still one of those touchy subjects over here. But that's going to be a unique opportunity with the UK as well, especially with their commonwealths, or like a couple conversations yesterday, like with France or other places that still have those territories back from like imperialism days, which we don't like to talk about too much, but kind of still happened and actually still super profitable from war, rape, tyranny from like 500 years ago. But what's going to happen in Europe is going to dictate based on EU GMP compliance standards, especially with PICS countries. So, American kind of scene here. It's like, we landed on the shore. We're like, fuck you, Europe. Like, we're going to go do our own thing over here. It's awesome. It's like, we were with you, but like, we don't want to, like, we're going to sign this declaration and do our own thing. And then it's like, what's over there? What's to the west? Who knows? New greenfield opportunities, blue ocean sorts of opportunities. And you're like, it's going to be fucking incredible. We're gonna like find all this stuff and gold, and then sometimes you literally get murdered. And there's people there that are like, this is ours, or like, I'm gonna go over here, this is a great idea, and bam, you fall off a cliff. So sometimes being first is very, very important, but it takes a lot of those first pioneers that got out there, and like, just like, I like that bottom picture there. It's like, if you do things wrong, you're the same as that dude. Like, how you doing? Like, where are you going? So as you're paving this way here, this is greenfield as well in Europe. It's greenfield around the world, and it's greenfield in the United States, but I have seen hundreds and hundreds of companies, thousands, start, fail, scale, merge, and it's not about, I'm gonna go and claim and plant my flag here and take this. Like I said the other day, it's like, you look left, you look right. That might be your biggest competitor here or there, but when we collaborate in human culture and human nature, we always succeed more. Like many of the languages I had to study, it's like there's no personal pronoun of I, it's only we. This is ours. We share this, and like we do. And this plant, it's like I own this is my IP, but like this plant, we're caretakers of it. And it's our duty as an industry to like develop this responsibly for one time with some consciousness before it just gets taken over, and all of a sudden you've got Seagram's and Bacardi and Constellation and just giant companies that have had things for like ever, like from fur trading to tobacco. When there's a new thing, you've got one shop, but it's the collaboration of not like, I'm gonna use this investment, it's mine. Yeah, sometimes I'm a fund manager. I do protect my portfolio companies, but I make them bigger by combining investments of other investors. So really just think like, even though you're like, this is mine and there's so much competition out there, if you all collaborate, you can be strong against things. And even though the Native Americans were actually right in this context, we were kind of the wrong ones. But that metaphor, just let it stick with you. If you do things wrong and you think you know everything, you literally might get shot in the back, front, side, doesn't matter. Even if it's the best idea in the world, they even still fail. So a big thing like with the Dutch weed experiment I wanted to go over, Giada, I saw you yesterday, so I had my staff use one of yours. This was big. We applied for this. We helped 2 groups to get this, and also a big United States company, Cookies brand, got this. So the weed experiment, we all know about coffee houses in the red light district and how that all works out. Kind of. Not from personal experience, of course, or any of you. So in the Netherlands, this whole coffee house thing, like, you can't grow it in the Netherlands. You can't import it, but they regulate the sale of it for residents, but then they only check IDs at the border near Germany at those certain coffee houses. So then the Dutch government's like, one, fucking Dutch love taxes. who doesn't? But like taxes are like heroin to a government. And once they get a taste, that's how we've tricked so many states into legalizing. It's like tax revenue, jobs. And they're like, and they literally become addicts. And then they'll fight the other markets and they'll go after the illicit market because they're not paying taxes. And more importantly, especially like, Lewis, the past director of Marijuana Enforcement Division here, had to deal with like, wow, we're regulating a new industry, but then there's all these pesticide issues or safety issues, or like I can't call OSHA to come and deal with like all these bamboo stakes and like people burning sulfur inside to kill fungus. You do that in like greenhouses or caves and things like that, but not when people are there. This is the most important shit that's happening on your goddamn continent right now. This is the first adult use sanctioned weed experiment. Even though it was a weed experiment before, they called it officially the weed experiment. It was hilarious. When we were doing those applications and having to translate all this stuff into Dutch, it was nuts. But I'm like, this is the first legally sanctioned produced cannabis in Europe for Europe. And you've all gone to Amsterdam, maybe or maybe not, and had an Amsterdam space cake or some random cones. You're like, I'm gonna try this Bubba Kush or this. You had no idea what you're getting. But the amount of pesticides, fungi, and other things in that from the tests that we've done from independent sampling, not like this, maybe a little, not this one, maybe. But these 10 companies are the only companies with licenses to do this. And the brands that are developed there, as tourists go there and get familiarized with those consumer packaged goods, you're like, I'm gonna start a giant brand in Germany, or like with this and that. When it comes to medical cannabis internationally, it's not about brands, it's about cost of production and like the contracts for import-export and all about compliance. It's not even about your brand at all. But this is gonna change everything for Europe. This is the foothold into this continent. Got 2 exclusive positions on investment there. This is going to be massive. And not just for the revenue the Dutch will make, but for the IP and brand licensing companies that are established, the consumer recognition of those consumer packaged goods, and that will dictate the entire future of this continent and what's gonna happen in the next year, year and a half, 2 years. So is Germany gonna be the cannabis capital of frickin' Europe? No, you're not. B-Farm was kind of annoying to deal with originally. Thank God that B-Farm, Infomed, all of these, the Danish medicines agencies do what they do, but each one of those is just like each state regulator like that we have to deal with. How are we gonna regulate pesticides? How are we gonna give licenses? Who's gonna pay me more to do this? I'm gonna give licenses to my brother and my cousin and my uncle. Not talking about North Macedonia here, but maybe, or some other places, or Greece, or how the military is gonna do all Italy's minus the hemp side. Awesome things are gonna happen here, and thank God the B-Farm allowed compassionate use medical cannabis for patients that needed medicine, which is the main reason we do what we do, getting medicine to people, be it medical or through adult use. There's gonna be great companies here, ancillary business opportunities. You're not first. Next door is. Think about some investment there, especially with BV and their taxes. Be really careful with some of these other novel cannabinoids as you're going through Europe. You're like, well, I can't get this license. I'm gonna do CBD. I'm gonna do Delta 8. That's gonna get scheduled like heroin very soon. Whenever you isolate something from nature, it's very dangerous and takes 11 years of clinical trials and about $500 million to know if it's safe or not, even for something like vitamin C. So just because there's this quasi gray area, it's literally black and white, and you can't build an empire on ambiguity like that. So you gotta be very careful. PICS countries are super important. Look at all those blue ones in Europe. If you do clinical trials, drug development, standardization of medicines, that's where you can sell it to all the big countries with all the money in the world that have the largest market share of drugs. And then the generics start to happen. But any of the countries that are in blue, that also have medical cannabis programs, massive opportunities. Screw all that. IP is super important. I talked about that a tad. The ancillary opportunities are enormous also for Europe as this is starting to develop, because like I said, it's not illegal to own something, the property and knowledge on how to do this, or the real estate. And like some of our conversations this week, like in the United States, we make 12 to 18% on real estate where I own the building, and I'm literally making 18.8% because they can't go to a bank. I get huge returns for our investors on that. And when it comes to just like our dispensary is going to be legal in Germany, and then well, which real estate? Churches, schools, parks, daycares, addiction centers, industrial zoning 1, manufacturing 2, commercial zoning for this, that, the other. You're like, I got this property, it's gonna work. Probably not. In my experience, like 10,000 real estate type plays, 99% of the time, if you have a property, it's not zoned correctly, it doesn't have 3-phase power, doesn't have natural gas, doesn't have water, doesn't have legal access or entitlement. No one wants to go and live and work there, like the 20 hectare greenhouse in Arizona that a company, I'm not gonna say their name, built in the middle of goddamn nowhere. So you have to think about all these things and really analyze those, but the ancillary side is huge. There was a hilarious pitches there, but I think it self-censored me because it was too vulgar. I'll leave that up to your mind. But in the future, just know, when you're going through these new greenfield places, if there's a body on your left and a body on your right, and something has been done and people have failed numerous times in other markets, like, the most valuable thing in human history is knowing what not to do. It's only through knowing what not to do can you actually start to see what to do. So look at all these examples in Canada, like giant warehouses, high cost of production, using bad pesticides, not having good integrated pest management. I dealt with a company in Colorado, they were not gonna name, $58 million in revenue. They were netting $300,000. $58 million in revenue, that's like an airline profit margin, even worse. Like airlines are like 1 to like 6, maybe Southwest is like 12%, probably not. These are numbers pre-Rona, I don't know the post ones. This is it. We have a very short window until these UN laws start to happen. Countries are gonna start to fold, and massive positions like Colombia, where it was first just oil, now flower, they're not a PICS country, but like I can produce a kilo of the highest quality cannabis you've ever seen there for about €5. And less in the future through combines and things. So agricultural commodity, consumer packaged goods, retail consumer experience. If you focus on this like outside industry things that are already known, you will succeed. If you come up with some harebrained idea on how to do a cannabis cryptocurrency crowdfunding program with some blockchain and, I don't know, throw in some drunk hookers in there too, and you think that's gonna be a great idea, or like a body sushi party, like we have to be mindful. No, I'm not gonna say that company's name either. We have to be mindful in what we do. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is probably the last great emerging industry in humankind. And if we do it right, it's not just for you and your profits or generational wealth. We're creating something we're gonna pass to future generations. This plant's been with us literally from the sea squirt 330 million years ago through a weird little evolution that made a cannabinoid receptor, and this thing's not even brain, that we're relatives to, has been like passing through. That was a receptor for a plant that hadn't even evolved yet. We're caretakers of this. We're evolving with this. Evolve, adapt, use good experts. We are fighting a war and need so much capital to do this, and a lot of the big companies that are out there are very terrifying investment opportunities, but there's so much good to be done in this space, and we can't do it without good collaboration. So I really appreciate the opportunity here today. I somehow made it on time. I don't know if I have a question or two for you, or...
If somebody has one quick question.
Don't be shy, this is your once in a lifetime. It's you. What do you got?
All right, where, who, did somebody raise their hand?
Let's yell it out, what you got?
Oh, Robert.
Here's the question, like how do like small scale operations, mom and pop type things, like little things kind of scale? Like how do you fit into that, especially with like bio or organic certifications? So one example, in the United States, organic certification is through the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. States can also do their own certification and standards, like Oregon and a few states can do that, just like each state can do their own pesticide regulation. But when you're doing something federally illegal, it's really hard to get federal organic certification. So one of my due diligence, like instant red flags, is someone's like, we grow cannabis organically. So here's a 25,000 euro sentence for you. We cultivate cannabis following organic methodologies using certified organic inputs. I didn't say I was organic anywhere. I said the word twice. I marketed, you think it's organic. And it's close to it without that label. That is so expensive to do. Even as a small farmer, when we tried to get organic certified, it was like a $10,000 thing. And it's like an echinacea farm in like Wisconsin. You're like, I can't do that. So small mom and pops, they've taken the risks. Merge, consolidate, grow, and get bought by something. Everyone can brew beer. Everyone can make wine. How many people do it? How many people had some wine last night that was homebrewed? It's fun to do once until you have to clean all those bottles and deal with it. So it takes a lot of money to do this well, compliantly scale, take market share, deal with liquor distribution. But like, I love a farmer's market more than anyone. But like farmers markets, how many tomatoes are sold at farmers markets versus in supermarkets? It's about 1.3% globally. And that's including all like the really poor countries that don't have Cisco or Nestle or other types of things like that. So if you are a small mom and pop and you have something unique, you must scale quickly or you will die. And if you make false statements or health claims, my product cures cancer, they will literally destroy you. Do not make fake health claims. Do not make fake certifications. Do not lie. Do not make fraud. And no matter what, there was a conversation or two yesterday I had. We're like, we're going to do this. We have this building and this and that. I'm like, I've literally read your 160-page law and know that what you're telling me is actually not even possible. So if you're going to play this game and you don't want to die, you don't want to get shot, you don't want to lose all your family's money or waste your life, which is the only thing you have, know the rules to play the game. And if you can help to write them and influence those rules, you're going to own that game. But do it legally, not with corrupt lobbyists. But absolute honor to share what I knew with you. Sorry for being offensive, but like I said, this is what we've done, what we do, and I'm not guessing. So absolute honor, everyone. Thank you, and wish you the best of luck.
Nick Easley.